Here is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, chapters 28 through 30. Here's chapter 28. By and by, it was getting up time, so I come down the ladder and started for downstairs. But as I come to the girls' room, the door was open, and I see Mary Jane sitting by her old hair trunk, which was open, and she'd been packing things in it, getting ready to go to England. Remember, the girls think they're going to England with the king and the duke. But she had stopped now with a folded gown in her lap and had her face in her hands, crying. I felt awful bad to see it. Of course, anybody would. I went in there and says, Miss Mary Jane, you can't bear to see people in trouble, and I can't most always. Tell me about it. So she done it. And it was the N-words. I just expected it. She said the beautiful trip to England was most about spoiled for her. She didn't know how she was ever going to be happy there, knowing the mother and the children weren't ever going to see each other no more. And then busted out bitterer than ever and flung up her hands and says, oh, dear, dear, to think they ain't ever going to see each other anymore. But they will, and inside of 2 weeks, and I know it, says I. Laws, it was out before I could think, and before I could budge, she throws her arms around my neck and told me to say it again, say it again, say it again. And there's answer number one, why Huck lets slip that the slaves will not be apart very long. I see I had spoke too sudden and said too much. It was in a close place. I asked her to let me think a minute, and she sat there very impatient and excited and handsome, but looking kind of happy and eased up like a person that's had a tooth pulled out. So I went to studying it out. I says to myself, I reckon on a body that ups and tells the truth when he is in a tight place is taking considerable many risks, though I hadn't no experience and can't say for certain. But it looks so to me anyway. And yet here's a case where I'm blessed if it don't look to me like the truth is better and actually safer than a lie. I must lay it by in my mind and think it over sometime or other. It's so kind of strange and unregular. I never see nothing like it. Well, I says to myself at last, I'm going to chance it. I'll up and tell the truth this time, though it does seem most like setting down on a keg of powder and touching it off just to see where it'll go. Then I says, Miss Mary Jane, is there any place out of town a little ways where you could go and stay 3 or 4 days? Yes, Mr. Lothrop's. Why? Never mind why yet. I'll tell you how I know the N-words will see each other again inside of 2 weeks here in this house. If I prove how I know it, will you go to Mr. Lothrop's and stay 4 days? 4 days, she says. I'll stay a year. All right, I says. I don't want nothing more out of you than just your word. I'd rather have it than another man's kiss the Bible. She smiled and reddened up very sweet, and I says, if you don't mind it, I'll shut the door and bolt it. Then I come back and sit down again and says, don't you holler. Just sit still and take it like a man. I got to tell the truth, and you want to brace up, Miss Mary, because it's a bad kind, and it's going to be hard to take, but there ain't no help for it. These uncles of yourn ain't no uncles at all. They're a couple of frauds, regular deadbeats. There, now we're over the worst of it. You can stand the rest, middle and easy. It jolted her up like everything, of course, but I was over the shoal water now, so I went right along, her eyes a-blazing higher and higher all the time, and told her every blame thing from where we first struck that young fool going up to the steamboat, clear through to where she flung herself onto the king's breast of the front door, and he kissed her 16 or 17 times. And then up she jumps with her face afire like sunset and says, the brute! Come, don't waste a minute, not a second. We'll have them tarred and feathered and flung in the river. Says I, certainly. But do you mean before you go to Mr. Lothrop's or... Oh, she says, what am I thinking about? She says, and sat right down again. Don't mind what I said. Please don't. You won't now, will you? Laying her silky hand on mine in that kind of way that I said I would die first. I never thought I was so stirred up, she says. Now go on. I won't do so anymore. You tell me what to do. Whatever you say, I'll do it. Well, I says, it's a rough gang, them two frauds, and I'm fixed so I got to travel with them a while longer, whether I want to or not. I'd rather not tell you why. And if you was to blow on them, this town would get me out of their claws, and I'd be all right, but there'd be another person you don't know about who'd be in big trouble. We got to save him, hain't we? Course. Well, then, we won't blow on them. Saying them words put a good idea in my head. I see how maybe I could get me and Jim rid of the frauds, get them jailed here, and then leave. But I didn't want to run the raft in daytime without anybody aboard to answer questions but me, so I didn't want the plan to begin work until pretty late tonight. I says, Miss Mary Jane, I'll tell you what we'll do, and you won't have to stay at Mr. Lothrop's so long, nother. How far is it? A little short of 4 miles, right out in the country back here. Well, that'll answer. Now you go along out there and lay low till 9 or half past tonight, and then get them to fetch you home again. Tell them you thought of something. If you get here before 11, put a candle in this window, and if I don't turn up, wait till 11, and then if I don't turn up, it means I'm gone and out of the way and safe. Then you come out and spread the news around and get these beats jailed. So there's Huck's somewhat convoluted plan to answer to number 2. Good, she says, I'll do it. And if it just happens that I don't get away, but get took up along with them, you must up and say I told you the whole thing beforehand, and you must stand by me all you can. Stand by you, indeed I will. They shan't touch a hair of your head, she says, and I see her nostrils spread and her eyes snap when she said it too. If I get away, I shan't be here, I says, to prove these rapscallions ain't your uncles. And I couldn't do it if I was here. I could swear they was beats and bummers, that's all, though that's worth something. Well, there's others that can do that better than what I can, and they're people that ain't going to be doubted as quick as I'd be. I'll tell you how to find them. Give me a pencil and a piece of paper. There. Royal Nonsuch brick spill. Put it away and don't lose it. When the court wants to find out something about these two, let them send up the brick spill and say they've got the men that played the Royal Nonsuch and ask for some witnesses. Why, you'll have that entire town down here before you can hardly wink, Miss Mary, and they'll come a-biling too. I judge we have got everything fixed about right now. So I says, just let the auction go right along and don't worry. Nobody don't have to pay for the things they buy till the whole day after the auction on account of the short notice. And they ain't going out of this till they got that money. And the way we fixed it, the sale ain't going to count. And they ain't going to get no money. It's just the way like it was with the N-words. It weren't no sale, and the N-words will be back before long. Why? They can't collect the money for the N-words yet. They're in the worst kind of fix, Miss Mary. Well, she says, I'll run down to breakfast now, and then I'll start straight for Mr. Lothrop's. Deed, that ain't the ticket, Miss Mary Jane, I says. By no manner of means, go before breakfast. Why? What did you reckon I wanted you to go at all for, Miss Mary? Well, I never thought. Come to think, I don't know. What was it? Why, it's because you ain't one of these leather-faced people. I don't want no better book than what your face is. A body can sit down and read it off like coarse print. Do you reckon you can go and face your uncles when they come to kiss you good morning and never? Oh, there, don't. Yes, I'll go before breakfast. I'll be glad to. And leave my sisters with them? Yes, never mind about them. They've got to stand it yet a while. They might suspicion something if all of you was to go. I don't want you to see them, nor your sisters, nor nobody in this town. If a neighbor was to ask, how was your uncles this morning, your face would tell them something. Now, you go right along, Miss Mary Jane, and I'll fix it with all of them. I'll tell Miss Susan to give your love to your uncles and say you went away for a few hours to get a little rest and change, or to see a friend, and you'll be back tonight or early in the morning. Gone to see a friend is all right, but I won't have my love given to them. Well, then it shan't be. It was well enough to tell her so. No harm in it. It was only a little thing to do and no trouble. It's the little things that smooths people's roads the most down here below. It would make Mary Jane comfortable, and it wouldn't cost nothing. Then I says, there's one more thing, that bag of money. Well, they've got that. It makes me feel pretty silly to think how they got it. No, you're out there. They ain't got it. Why? Who's got it? I wish I knowed, but I don't. I had it because I stole it from them, and I stole it to give to you, and I know where I hid it, but I'm afraid it ain't there no more. I'm awful sorry, Miss Mary Jane. I'm just as sorry as I can be, but I done the best I could. I did, honest. I come nigh getting caught, and I had to shove it into the first place I come to and run, and it weren't a good place. Oh, stop blaming yourself. It's too bad to do it, and I won't allow it. You couldn't help it. It wasn't your fault. Where did you hide it? I don't want to set her to thinking about her troubles again, and I couldn't seem to get my mouth to tell her what would make her see that corpse laying in the coffin with that bag of money on his stomach, so for a minute I didn't say nothing. Then I says, I'd rather not tell you where I put it, Miss Mary Jane, if you don't mind letting me off, but I'll write it for you on a piece of paper, and you can read it along the road to Mr. Lothrop's if you want to. Do you reckon that'll do? Oh, yes. So I wrote, I put it in the coffin. It was in there when you was crying there away in the night. I was behind the door, and I was mighty sorry for you, Miss Mary Jane. And there is number 3. It made my eyes water a little to remember her crying there all by herself in the night, and them devils laying there right on her own roof, shaming her and robbing her. And when I folded it up and give it to her, I see the water come into her eyes too. And she shook me by the hand hard and says, goodbye. I'm going to do everything just as you've told me. And if I don't ever see you again, I shan't ever forget you. And I'll think of you a many a time, and I'll pray for you too. And she was gone. Pray for me. I reckon if she'd known me, she'd take a job that was more near her size. But I bet she done it just the same. She was just that kind. She had the grit to pray for Judas if she took the notion. There weren't no back down to her, I judge. You may say what you want to, but in my opinion, she had more sand in her than any girl I ever see. In my opinion, she was just full of sand. Sand like guts, like courage. Sorry. It sounds like flattery, but it ain't no flattery. And when it comes to beauty and goodness, too, she lays over them all. I ain't ever seen her since that time I see her go out of that door. No, I ain't ever seen her since. But I reckon I've thought of her many and many a million times, and of her saying she would pray for me. And if I ever thought it would do any good for me to pray for her, blamed if I wouldn't have done it or bust. Well, Mary Jane, she lit out the back way, I reckon, because nobody see her go. When I struck Susan in the hair lip, I says, what's the name of them people on the other side of the river that you all go to see sometimes? They says, there's several, but it's the Proctors mainly. That's the name, I says. I almost forgot it. Well, Miss Mary Jane, she told me to tell you she's gone over there in a dreadful hurry. One of them's sick. Which one? I don't know. At least the ways I kind of forget, but I think it's... Sakes alive, I hope it ain't Hannah. I'm sorry to say it, I says, but Hannah's the very one. My goodness, and she's so well only last week. Is she took bad? It ain't no name for it. They set up with her all night, Miss Mary Jane said, and they don't think she'll last many hours. Only think of that now. What's the matter with her? I couldn't think of anything reasonable right off that way. So I says, mumps. Mumps, your granny. They don't set up with people that's got the mumps. They don't they? You better bet they do with these mumps. These mumps is different. It's a new kind, Miss Mary Jane said. How's it a new kind? Because it's mixed up with other things. What other things? Well, measles and whooping cough and erysipelas and consumption and yaller janders and brain fever and I don't know what all. My land, and they call it the mumps. That's what Miss Mary Jane said. Well, what in the nation do they call it the mumps for? Why, because it is the mumps. That's what it starts with. Well, there ain't no sense in it. A body might stump his toe and take pizzin and fall down the well and break his neck and bust his brains out, and somebody come along and ask what killed him, and some numbskull up and say, why, he stumped his toe? Will there be any sense in that? No, there ain't no sense in this neither. Is it catching? Is it catching? Why, how you talk? Is a harrow catching? Harrow's a thing, a farming tool you dig in the ground, and so it catches things. In the dark, if you don't hitch onto one tooth, that was a harrow, you're bound onto another, ain't you? And you can't get away with that tooth without fetching the whole harrow along, can you? Well, these kinds of mumps is a kind of harrow, as you may say. And it ain't no slouch of a harrow, nother. You come to get it hitched on good. Well, it's awful, I think, says the hare lip. I'll go to Uncle Harvey and, oh, yes, I says, I would. Of course I would. I wouldn't lose no time. Well, why wouldn't you? Just look at it and maybe you can see. Ain't your uncles obliged to get home along to England as fast as they can? And do you reckon that they'd be mean enough to go off and leave you to go all that journey by yourselves? You know they'll wait for you. So far, so good. Your Uncle Harvey's a preacher, ain't he? Very well, then. Is a preacher going to deceive a steamboat clerk? Is he going to deceive a ship clerk so as to get them to let Miss Mary Jane go aboard? Now, you know he ain't. What will he do then? Why, he'll say, it's a great pity, but my church matters has got to get along the best way they can, for my niece has been exposed to the dreadful pluribus unum mumps. And so it's my bound and duty to sit down here and wait the 3 months it takes to show on her if she's got it. But never mind. If you think it's best to tell your Uncle Harvey, there's the answer to number 4. It's saying basically, if they think she's been exposed to something, they won't let them travel to England, and you don't want to tell them that. Shucks. And stay fooling around here. We could all be having good times in England whilst we was waiting to find out whether Mary Jane's got it or not. Why, you talk like a muggins. Well, anyway, maybe you better tell some of the neighbors. Listen at that now. You do beat off a natural stupidness. Can't you see they go and tell? There ain't no way just not to tell anybody at all. Well, maybe you're right. Yes, I judge you are right. But I reckon we ought to tell Uncle Harvey she's gone out a while anyway, so he won't be uneasy about her. Yes, Miss Mary Jane, she wanted you to do that. She says, tell them to give Uncle Harvey and William my love and a kiss, and say I've run over to the river to see Mr. What is the name of that rich family your Uncle Peter used to think so much of? I mean the one that, why, you must mean the Apthorpes, ain't it? Of course, bother them kind of names. A body can't ever seem to remember them half the time somehow. Yes, she said, Say she has run over for to ask the Apthorps to be sure and come to the auction and buy this house, because she allowed her Uncle Peter would rather they had it than anybody else. And she's going to stick to them till they say they'll come. And if she ain't too tired, she's coming home. And if she is, she'll be home in the morning anyway. She said, don't say nothing about the Proctors, but only about the Apthorps, which will be perfectly true, because she is going there to speak about their buying the house. I know it because she told me so herself. All right, they said, and cleared out to lay for their uncles and give them the love and the kisses and tell them the message. Everything was all right now. The girls wouldn't say nothing because they wanted to go to England, and the king and the duke would rather Mary Jane was off working for the auction than around in reach of Dr. Robinson. I felt very good. I judged I had done it pretty neat. I reckon Tom Sawyer couldn't have done it no neater himself. Of course, he would have thrown more style into it, but I can't do that very handy, not being brung up to it. Well, they held the auction in the public square along towards the end of the afternoon, and it strung along and strung along. The old man, he was on hand and looking his level piousest up there alongside the auctioneer and chipping in a little scripture now and then, or a little goody-goody saying of some kind. And the duke, he was around goo-gooing for sympathy, all he knowed how, and just spreading himself generally. But by and by, the thing dragged through, and everything was sold, everything but a little old trifling lot in the graveyard. So they got to work that off. I never seen such a graft as the king was for wanting to swallow up everything. Well, whilst they was at it, a steamboat landed, and in about 2 minutes, up comes a crowd, a whooping and a yelling and a laughing and carrying on and singing out. Here's your opposition line. Here's your 2 sets of heirs to old Peter Wilkes. And you pays your money, and you takes your choice. So there's the number 5, the end of chapter 28. The king and the duke have waited too long, because now who has shown up? This is trouble for them. Chapter 29. They was fetching a very nice-looking old gentleman along and a nice-looking younger one with his right arm and a sling. And my souls, how the people yelled and laughed and kept it up. But I didn't see no joke about it, and I judged it would strain the Duke and the King some to see any. I reckon they'd turn pale, but no. Nary a pale did they turn. The Duke, he never let on he suspicioned what was up, but just went a-goo-gooing around, happy and satisfied, like a jug that's googling out buttermilk. And as for the king, he just gazed and gazed down sorrowful on them newcomers, like it gave him the stomach ache in his very heart to think there could be such frauds and rascals in the world. Oh, he done it admirable. Lots of the principal people gathered around the king to let him see where they was to let him see they was on his side. That old gentleman that had just come looked all puzzled to death. Pretty soon he begun to speak, and I see straight off he pronounced like an Englishman, not the king's way, though the king's was pretty good for an imitation. I can't give the old gent's words, nor can I imitate him, but he turned around to the crowd and says, about like this, "This is a surprise to me, which I wasn't looking for, and I'll acknowledge, candidate Frank, I ain't very well fixed to meet it and answer it, for my brother and me has had misfortunes. He's broke his arm, and our baggage got put off in a town above here last night, in the night, by mistake. I am Peter Wilkes's brother Harvey, and this is his brother William, which can't hear nor speak, and can't even make signs to amount to much now. He's only got one hand to work them with. We are who we say we are, and in a day or two, when I get the baggage, I can prove it. But up till then, I won't say nothing more, but go to the hotel and wait." There's number 6, what the new brothers, why they can't prove their identity. So him and the new dummy started off, and the king, he laughs and blethers out, "Broke his arm. Very likely, ain't it? And very convenient, too, for a fraud that's got to make signs and hain't learned how. Lost their baggage. That's mighty good and mighty ingenious under the circumstances." So he laughed again, and so did everybody else, except 3 or 4, or maybe half a dozen. One of these was that doctor. Another one was a sharp-looking gentleman with a carpet bag of the old-fashioned kind made out of carpet stuff that had just come off the steamboat, was talking to him in a low voice and glancing toward the king now and then and nodding their heads. It was Levi Bell, the lawyer that was gone up to Louisville, and another was a big, rough husky that come along and listened to all the old gentleman said and was listening to the king now. And when the king got done, this husky up and says, "Say, looky here, if you are Harvey Wilkes, when'd you come to this town?" "The day before the funeral, friend," says the king. "But what time of day?" "In the evening, about an hour or 2 before sundown." "How'd you come?" "I come down on the Susan Powell from Cincinnati." "Well then, how'd you come to be up at the pit in the morning in a canoe?" "I weren't up at the pit in the morning." "It's a lie." Several of them jumped for him and begged him not to talk that way to an old man and a preacher. Preacher be hanged. He's a fraud and a liar. He was up at the Pint that morning. I live up there, don't I? Well, I was up there, and he was up there. I see him there. He come in a canoe along with Tim Collins and a boy. The doctor, he up and says, would you know the boy again if you were to see him, Hines? I reckon I would, but I don't know. What? Yonder he is now. I know him perfectly easy. It was me he pointed at. The doctor says, neighbors, I don't know whether the new couple is frauds or not, but if these two ain't frauds and I'm an idiot, that's all. I think it's our duty to see that they don't get away from here till we've looked into this thing. Come along, Hines, come along, the rest of you. We'll take these fellows to the tavern and affront them with the other couple, and I reckon we'll find out something before we get through. It was nuts for the crowd, though maybe not for the king's friends, so we all started. It was about sundown. Doctor, he led me along by the hand and was plenty kind enough, but he never let go my hand. We all got in a big room in the hotel and lit up some candles and fetched in the new couple. First, the doctor says, I don't wish to be too hard on these two men, but I think they're frauds, and they may have accomplices we don't know nothing about. If they have, won't the accomplices get away with that bag of gold Peter Wilkes left? It ain't unlikely. If these men ain't frauds, they won't object to sending for that money and letting us keep it till they prove they're all right. Ain't that so? Everybody agreed to that. So I judged they had our gang in a pretty tight place right at the outstart. But the king, he only looks sorrowful and says, gentlemen, I wish the money was there, for I ain't got no disposition to throw anything in the way of a fair, open, out-and-out investigation of this miserable business. But alas, the money ain't there. You can send and see if you want to. Where is it then? Well, when my niece gave it to me to keep for her, I took it and hid it inside the straw tick of my bed, not wishing to bank it for the few days we'd be here, and considering the bed a safe place, we not being used to the N-words and supposing them honest, like servants in England. The N-words stole it the very next morning after I had went downstairs, and when I sold them, I hadn't missed the money yet, so they got clean away with it. My servant here can tell you all about it, gentlemen. The doctor and several said, shucks. And I see nobody didn't altogether believe him. One man asked me if I see the N-word steal it. I said no, but I see them sneaking out of the room and hustling away, and I never thought nothing. Only I reckon they was afraid they had waked up my master and was trying to get away before he made trouble with them. That was all they asked me. Then the doctor whirls on me and says, are you English too? I says yes. And him and some of the others laughed and said, stuff. Well, then they sailed in on the general investigation, and there we had it, up and down, hour in, hour out. Nobody ever said a word about supper, nor never ever seemed to think about it. And so they kept it up, and it was the worst mixed up thing you ever see. They made the king tell his yarn, and they made the old gentleman tell his'n, and anybody but a lot of prejudiced chuckleheads would have seen that the old gentleman was spinning truth and the other one lies. And by they had me up to tell what I knowed. The king, he gave me a left-handed look out of the corner of his eye, and so I knowed well enough to talk on the right side. I began to tell about Sheffield and how we lived there and all about the English Wilkses and so on, but I didn't get pretty fur till the doctor begun to laugh, and Levi Bell, the lawyer, says, sit down, my boy. I wouldn't strain myself if I was you. I reckon you ain't used to lying. It don't seem to come handy. What you want is practice. You do it pretty awkward. I didn't care nothing for the compliment, but I was glad to be let off anyway. The doctor, he started to say something and turns and says, if you'd been in town at first, Levi Bell. The king broke in and reached out his hand and says, why, is this my poor dead brother's old friend that he's wrote so often about? The lawyer and him shook hands, and the lawyer smiled and looked pleased, and then they talked right a long while, and then got to one side and talked low, and at last the lawyer speaks up and says, that'll fix it. I'll take the order and send it along with your brothers, and then they'll know it's all right. So they got some paper and a pen, and the king, he sat down and twisted his head to one side and chawed his tongue and scrawled off something, and then they gave the pen to the duke, and then for the first time the duke looked sick, but he took the pen and wrote. So then the lawyer turns to the new old gentleman and says, you and your brother please write a line or two and sign your names. The old gentleman wrote, but nobody couldn't read it. The lawyer looked powerful astonished and says, well, it beats me, and snaked a lot of old letters out of his pocket and examined them, and then examined the old man's writing, and then them again, and then says, these old letters is from Harvey Wilkes, and here's these two's handwritings, and anybody can see they didn't write them. The king and the duke looked sold and foolish, I tell you, to see how the lawyer took them in. And here's this old gentleman's handwriting. Anybody can tell easy enough he didn't write them. Fact is, the scratches he makes aren't properly written at all. Now, here's some letters from the new old gentleman. Says, if you please, let me explain. Nobody can read my hand but my brother there, so he copies for me. It's his hand you've got there, not mine. Well, says the lawyer, this is a state of things. I've got some of William's letters too, so if you get him to write a line or so, we can compare. He can't write with his left hand, says the old gentleman. If he could use his right hand, you would see he wrote his own letters and mine too. Look at both, please. They're by the same hand. The lawyer done it and says, I'll believe it's so. And if it ain't so, there's a heap stronger resemblance than I noticed before anyway. Well, I thought we was right on the track of a solution, but it's gone to grass partly. But anyway, one thing's proved. These two ain't either of them Wilkses. And he wagged his head toward the king and the duke. So there's number 7 about the test the lawyer devises and why it's not conclusive. Well, what do you think? That mule-headed old fool wouldn't give in then. Indeed, he wouldn't. Said it weren't no fair test. Said his brother William was the cussedest joker in the world and hadn't tried to write. He see William was going to play one of his jokes the minute he put the pen to paper. And so he warmed up and went warbling right along until he was actually beginning to believe what he was saying himself. But pretty soon the new old gentleman broke in and says, I've thought of something. Is there anybody here that helped to lay out the late Peter Wilkes' full burying? Yes, says somebody. Me and Ab Turner done it. We're both here. Then the old man turns toward the king and says, perhaps this gentleman can tell me what was tattooed on his breast. Blamed if the king didn't have to brace up mighty quick, or he'd have squished down like a bluff bank that the river is cut under. It took him so sudden. And mind you, it was a thing that was calculated to make most anybody squish, to get fetched such a solid one as that without any notice, because how was he going to know what was tattooed on the man? He widened a little, he couldn't help it, and it was mighty still in there, and everybody bending a little forward and gazing at him. Says I to myself, now he'll throw up the sponge. There ain't no more use. Well, did he? A body can't hardly believe it, but he didn't. I reckon he thought he'd keep the thing up till he tired them people out, so they'd thin out, and him and the Duke could break loose and get away. Anyway, he sat there, and pretty soon he begun to smile and says, It's a very tough question, ain't it? Yes, sir, I can tell you what's tattooed on his breast. It's just a small, thin, blue arrow. That's what it is, and if you don't look close, you can't see it. Now what do you say, hey? Well, I never seen anything like that old blister for clean out-and-out cheek. The new old gentleman turns brisk towards Ab Turner and his pard. His eye lights up like he judged he got the king this time and says, There! You've heard what he said. Was there any such mark on Peter Wilkes' breast? Both of them spoke up and says, We didn't see no such mark. Good, says the old gentleman. Now, what did you see on his breast was a small, dim P and a B, which is initially dropped when he was young, and a W with dashes between them. So, P, B, W. And he marked them that way on a piece of paper. Come, ain't that what you saw? Both of them spoke up again and says, No, we didn't. We never see any marks at all. Well, everybody was in a state of mind now, and they sings out, The whole bilins of them's frauds. Let's duck them. Let's drown them. Let's ride them on a rail. And everybody was whooping at once, and there was a rattling pow-pow. But the lawyer, he jumps on the table and yells and says, Gentlemen, hear me just a word, just a single word, if you please. There's one way yet. Let's go and dig the corpse up and look. So there's your answer to number 8 about what they're going to do to determine who the real brothers are. That took them. Hooray! They all shouted and was starting right off, but the lawyer and the doctor sung out, Hold on, call all these 4 men and the boy and fetch them along too. We'll do it, they all shouted. If we don't find them marks, we'll lynch the whole gang. I was scared now, I tell you. But there weren't no getting away, you know. They gripped us all and marched us right along straight to the graveyard, which was 1.5 miles down the river, and the whole town at our heels, for we made noise enough, and it was only 9 in the evening. As we went by our house, I wished I hadn't sent Mary Jane out of town, because now if I could tip her the wink, she'd light out and save me and blow on our deadbeats. Well, we swarmed along down the river road, just carrying on like wildcats. And to make it more scary, the sky was darkening up, and the lightning began to wink and flitter, and the wind to shiver amongst the leaves. This was the most awful trouble and most dangerous I was ever in. And I was kind of stunned. Everything was going so different from what I had allowed for. Instead of being fixed so I could take my own time if I wanted to and see all the fun and have Mary Jane at my back to save me and set me free when the clothes fit come, here was nothing in the world betwixt me and sudden death but just them tattoo marks. If they didn't find them, I couldn't bear to think about it. And yet somehow I couldn't think about nothing else. It got darker and darker, and it was a beautiful time to give the crowd the slip. But that big husky had me by the wrist, Hines, and a body might as well try to give Goliath the slip. He dragged me right along. Goliath is Goliath, mispronunciation, the giant of the Bible. He dragged me right along. He was so excited, and I had to run to keep up. When they got there, they swarmed into the graveyard and washed over it like an overflow. And when they got to the grave, they found they had about 100 times as many shovels as they wanted, but nobody hadn't thought to fetch a lantern. But they sailed into digging anyway by the flicker of the lightning and sent a man to the nearest house a half-mile off to borrow one. So they dug and dug like everything, and it got awful dark, and the rain started, and the wind swished and swushed along, and the lightning come brisker and brisker, and the thunder boomed. But then people never took no notice of it. They was so full of this business. And 1 minute, you could see everything and every face in that big crowd and the shovelfuls of dirt sailing up out of the grave. And the next second, the dark wiped it all out, and you couldn't see nothing at all. At last, they got out the coffin and began to unscrew the lid, and then such another crowding and shouldering and shoving as there was to scrouge in and get a sight you never see. And in the dark that way, it was awful. Hines, he hurt my wrist dreadful, pulling and tugging so, and I reckon he clean forgot I was in the world, he was so excited and panting. All of a sudden, the lightning let go a perfect sluice of white glare, and somebody sings out, "By the living Jingo, here's the bag of gold on his breast." Hines let out a whoop like everybody else and dropped my wrist and gave a big surge to bust his way in and get a look. And the way I lit out and shinned for the road in the dark, there ain't nobody can tell. There's your answer to number 9, how Huck is able to get away. I had the road all to myself, and I fairly flew, leastways I had it all to myself except the solid dark and now and then glares, and the buzzing of the rain and the thrashing of the wind and the splitting of the thunder. And as sure as you were born, I did clip it along. When I struck the town, I see there weren't nobody out in the storm, so I never hunted for no back streets, but humped it straight through the main one. And when I begun to get towards our house, I aimed my eye and set it. No light there, the house all dark, which made me feel sorry and disappointed. I didn't know why. But at last, just as I was sailing by, flash comes the light in Mary Jane's window, and my heart swelled up sudden like to bust. In the same second, the house and all was behind me in the dark, and I wasn't ever going to be before me no more in this world. She was the best girl I ever see and had the most sand. The minute I was far enough above the town to see I could make the towhead, I began to look sharp for a boat to borrow, and the first time the lightning showed me one that wasn't chained, I snatched it and shoved. It was a canoe and weren't fastened with nothing but a rope. The towhead was a rattling big distance off, away out there in the middle of the river, but I didn't lose no time. And when I struck the raft at last, I was so fagged, not a homophobic slur, it means tired. I was so fagged I would have just laid down and blow and gasp if I could have afforded it, but I didn't. As I sprung aboard, I sung out, "Out with you, Jim, and set her loose! Glory be to goodness, we're shut of them!" Jim let out and was a-coming for me with both arms spread. He was so full of joy. But when I glimpsed him in the lightning, my heart shut up in my mouth, and I went overboard backwards, for I forgot he was old King Lear and a drowned Arab all in one, and it most scared the lives and lights out of me. But Jim fished me out, was going to hug me and bless me and so on. He was so glad I was back, and we was shut of the king and the duke. But I says, "Not now, have it for breakfast, cut loose and let her slide." So in 2 seconds away we went, a-sliding down the river, and it did seem so good to be free again and all by ourselves on the big river and nobody to bother us. I had to skip around a bit and jump up and crack my heels a few times. I couldn't help it. But about the third crack, I noticed a sound that I knowed mighty well, and I held my breath and listened and waited. And sure enough, when the next flash busted out over the water, here they come. And just a-laying on their oars and making their skiff hum. It was the king and the duke. So I wilted right down on the planks then and give up. It was all I could do to keep from crying. That's the end of chapter 29. Here's chapter 30. When they got aboard, the king went for me and shook me by the collar and says, "Try to give us the slip, was ye, you pup? Tired of our company, hey?" I says, "No, your majesty, we weren't. Please don't, your majesty." Quick then and tell us what was your idea, or I'll shake the insides out of you. Honest, I'll tell you everything just as it happened, Your Majesty. The man who had a hold of me was very good to me and kept saying he had a boy about as big as me that died last year, and he was sorry to see a boy in such a dangerous fix. And when they was all took by surprise by finding the gold and made a rush for the coffin, he lets go of me and whispers, heal it now or they'll hang ye sure. And I lit out. It didn't seem no good for me to stay. I couldn't do nothing, and I didn't want to be hung if I could get away, so I never stopped running until I found the canoe. And when I got here, I told Jim to hurry or they'd catch me and hang me yet, and said I was afeared you and the Duke wasn't alive now, and I was awful sorry, and so was Jim, and was awful glad when we see you coming. You may ask Jim if I didn't. Jim said it was so, and the king told him to shut up, and said, oh yes, it's mighty likely, and shook me up again, and said he reckoned he'd drown me. But the Duke says, let go of the boy, you old idiot. Would you have done any different? Did you inquire around for him when you got loose? I don't remember it. So the king let go of me and began to cuss that town and everybody in it. But the Duke says, you better a blame side give yourself a good cussing, for you're the one that's entitled to it most. You ain't done a thing from the start that had any sense in it, except coming out so cool and cheeky with that imaginary blue arrow mark. That was bright. It was right down bully, and it was just the thing that saved us. For it hadn't been for that, they'd have jailed us till them Englishmen's baggage came, and then the penitentiary, you bet. But that trick took him to the graveyard, and the gold done us still a bigger kindness. For if the excited fools hadn't let go all Holtz and made a rush to get a look, we'd have slept in our cravats tonight. Cravats warranted to wear, too, longer than we need them to. Cravats like a necktie. They would have been hung tonight, is what he's saying, if they hadn't gone to the graveyard and seen the gold. They was still a minute thinking. Then the Duke says, kind of absent-minded, like, and we reckon the N-word stole it. That made me squirm. Yes, says the Duke, kind of slow and deliberate and sarcastic. We did. After about a half minute, the king draws out, leastways, I did. The Duke says the same way, on the contrary, I did. The king kind of ruffles up and says, looky here, Billswater, what are you referring to? The Duke says, pretty brisk, when it comes to that, maybe you'll let me ask, what was you referring to? Shucks, says the king, very sarcastic, but I don't know. Maybe you was asleep and didn't know you was about. The Duke bristles right up now and says, oh, let up on this cussed nonsense. Do you take me for a blame fool? Don't you reckon I know who hid that money in that coffin? Yes, sir. I know you do know, because you done it yourself. It's a lie. And the Duke went for him. The king sings out, take your hands off me. Let go of my throat. I take it all back. So there's number 10. Basically, they're both accusing each other of stealing the gold, and the king basically admits to it because he doesn't want to get choked out by the Duke. The Duke says, well, you just owed up first that you did hide that money there, intending to give me the slip one of these days, and come back and dig it up and have it all to yourself. Wait just a minute, Duke. Answer me this one question, honest and fair. If you didn't put the money there, say it, and I'll believe you, and take back everything I said. You old scoundrel, I didn't, and you know I didn't. There now. Well, then, I believe you, but answer me only just this one more. Now, don't get mad. Didn't you have it in your mind to hook the money and hide it? The Duke never said nothing for a little bit. And then he says, well, I don't care if I did. I didn't do it anyway. But you not only had it in mind to do it, but you done it. I wished I may never die if I'd done it, Duke, and that's honest. I won't say I weren't going to do it, because I was, but somebody got it ahead of me. It's a lie. You done it. And you got to say you done it, or... The king began to gurgle, and then he gasped out, enough! I own up. I was very glad to hear him say that. It made me feel much more easier than what I was feeling before. So the Duke took his hands off and says, if you ever deny it again, I'll drown you. It's well for you to sit there and blubber like a baby. It's fitting for you after all the way you've acted. I never see such an old ostrich for wanting to gobble everything. And I trust in you all the time like you was my own father. You ought to have been ashamed of yourself to stand by and hear it saddled onto a lot of poor N-words and you never say a word for them. It makes me feel ridiculous to think I was soft enough to believe that rubbish. Cuss you, I can see now what you was so anxious to make up the deficit. You wanted to get that money I got out of the nunsuch and one thing or another and scoop it all. There's number 11, basically. I kind of answered the story, but the king, why does he admit to something he didn't do? The king says, timid and still a snuffling, why, Duke, it was you that said make up the deficit. It weren't me. Dry up. I don't want to hear no more out of you, says the Duke. And now you see what you got by it. They've got all their own money back, and all of ourn but a shekel or two besides. Go on to bed. Don't you deficit me no more deficits, long as you live. So the king sneaked into the wigwam and took to his bottle for comfort. And before long, the duke tackled his bottle. And so in about a half an hour, they was thick as thieves again. And the tighter they got, the lovinger they got. And they went off snoring in each other's arms. They both got powerful mellow, but I noticed the king didn't get mellow enough to forget to remember to not deny about him hiding the money bag again. That made me feel easy and satisfied. Of course, when they got to snoring, we had a long gabble, and I told Jim everything. And there's answer number 12 and the end of chapter 30. Thanks for coming.